All right, get this.
Oh, yeah.
Today we're tackling Josh Waitzkin's The Art of Learning.
Okay.
You might know him as the chess prodigy from Searching for Bobby Fischer.
Right, right.
But this book,
Mm-hmm.
this is about what he did after conquering the chess world.
It's fascinating because it isn't just a typical sports biography.
Right.
Waitzkin digs into the mental game of mastery, how those skills transfer to, well, pretty much anything you set your mind to.
So chess, martial arts, even just navigating life's curveballs.
Yeah.
We're going to pull out the most useful bits from Waitzkin's journey and see how they apply to you.
And what's interesting is how Waitzkin consciously chose to move on from chess.
Okay.
It wasn't about finding the next big thing. It was deeper than that.
Yeah.
He was searching for something more fulfilling.
He talks about chess becoming almost a burden after the movie.
Oh, really?
All that attention made it feel alien and disquieting.
Wow.
I can relate.
Yeah.
Ever had a hobby become less fun when there's pressure to perform?
That's the relatable part.
Right.
But what sets Waitzkin apart is he deliberately sought out a new challenge.
Yeah.
Tai Chi push hands.
Okay.
And this is where he lays out the idea of parallel learning, how those chess skills became the foundation for mastering a physical art.
So it's not like he just forgot everything about chess.
No, yeah.
He's saying the mental processes,
Right.
how you adapt under pressure, how you break down a problem, that stuff carries over.
Right. And
Yeah.
his anecdote about his first push hands class,
Yes.
being schooled by his master,
Yeah.
feeling like he's sucked into a vacuum.
Totally.
That's the beginner experience we've all had.
Totally.
Yeah.
But here's where Waitzkin gets really interesting.
Okay.
He introduces this concept of investment in loss.
Mm-hmm.
Most of us dread setbacks, right?
Yeah, of course.
But he learned to actually embrace them.
He doesn't just say failure is good.
Right.
He breaks it down.
Yeah.
Think back to when you were 8 years old.
Okay.
Waitzkin was already a chess champ.
Right.
Then he loses this big tournament.
Oh, no.
Devastated, obviously.
Yeah.
And his family takes him on a fishing trip to Bimini to clear his head.
I'm picturing turquoise water, white sand beaches.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's in Bimini that he starts to see loss differently, not as the end,
Right.
but as a chance to analyze what went wrong, adjust, and come back stronger.
Yeah.
How many of us just stew in frustration instead of digging into what we could have done better?
That's a huge mindset shift.
It is.
And he applies this to everything, not just competition.
You're right.
So think about a project at work that flopped.
Uh-huh.
Waitzkin's giving us a framework to turn that into fuel for growth, not just beat ourselves up.
And this leads into another key technique.
Okay.
Waitzkin calls it making smaller circles.
All right.
Instead of getting overwhelmed by the complexity of something new,
Right.
he starts with mastering the fundamentals, then gradually expands his skills outward.
He uses this in both chess and Tai Chi.
Yes.
Like in Tai Chi, he'd break down a movement into tiny details,
Okay.
relax shoulders,
Mm-hmm.
feeling your breath all the way to your fingertips.
Right.
That almost sounds too simple, right?
It's about building a strong foundation.
Right?
Waitzkin says this is how masters in any field develop those seemingly invisible skills that make them so good.
Okay.
Like a boxer's jab.
Yeah.
It's a basic punch,
Right.
but when mastered,
Yeah.
it's lightning fast and incredibly powerful.
He compares it to watching his Tai Chi master,
Mm-hmm.
whose movements were so subtle they were almost imperceptible.
Really?
It's like they're operating on a different level.
Wow. Wait,
Okay.
hold on.
What's that?
Didn't he also talk about his master pushing him across the room without even seeming to touch him?
Yeah, he did.
Is this getting into some kind of mystical territory?
It does sound a bit out there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But Waitzkin is careful to ground it in reality.
Okay.
He's not talking about magic.
But a deep understanding of leverage, timing,
Right.
and sensitivity to his opponent's energy?
Yeah.
It's about years of practice,
Yeah.
honing those subtle skills until they become second nature.
Okay, so we've got investment and loss,
Mm-hmm.
making smaller circles,
Yeah.
and now he's talking about practically slowing down time during a martial arts match where he actually broke his hand.
Oh, wow.
I'm officially intrigued.
Yeah.
How is that even possible?
It's pretty amazing.
Is this some kind of superpower?
This is where he gets into the science of what athletes call the zone.
Okay.
That state of peak performance where everything seems to slow down. You're operating at a different level. But Waitzkin, being a bit of a science buff,
Yeah.
dives into the how of it,
Okay.
using a concept called chunking.
Okay, break that down for us.
Sure.
What is chunking?
Okay, so chunking,
Yeah.
essentially it's how our brains group information together to process it more efficiently.
Okay.
Experts have developed these highly sophisticated chunks in their area of expertise, meaning their brains aren't working harder, they're working smarter.
So their conscious mind is freed up because all that complex processing is happening almost automatically.
Yeah, that's it.
That makes sense.
Right.
But how do you actually train your brain to develop these chunks?
That's something we'll dive into later.
Yo.
But first, there's something else Waitzkin explores that's even more mind-bending.
Oh, really?
He talks about this idea of reading your opponent's mind.
Hold up.
Yeah.
Are we talking Jedi mind tricks now?
Not quite.
Okay.
What Waitzkin's describing is more about reading intention,
Okay.
using subtle cues to anticipate your opponent's next move.
Okay.
It's where he blends Eastern philosophy with practical application.
So how does that play out in real life?
Well,
Give us an example.
in Tai Chi,
Yeah.
he learned to anticipate his opponent's movements based on tiny details.
Okay.
A slight blink, a change in breathing, even the way they were shifting their weight.
Interesting.
He trained himself to pick up on these unconscious patterns and use them to his advantage.
He even used this in chess, right?
He did.
He talks about manipulating his own emotional tells to mislead his opponents.
Exactly.
Wow.
He realized that he couldn't completely hide his emotions,
Right.
so he decided to control them instead.
Okay.
He'd purposely create these little tells, a furrowed brow, a well-timed sip of water to throw his opponents off their game.
That's incredible.
It is, isn't it?
It's like turning your weaknesses into weapons.
Exactly.
So we've covered investment and loss,
Yeah.
making smaller circles,
Right.
slowing down time, and now reading intention. This is a lot to take in.
It is a lot.
How do we actually put all these principles into practice?
Don't worry.
Yeah.
Waitzkin doesn't just leave us with a bunch of abstract concepts.
Okay.
He gives us surprisingly practical tools for applying these principles to our own lives. And that's what we'll explore next.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I was starting to feel like I needed a cheat sheet to keep up with all this wisdom.
You know, right?
So what's the next step?
That's where the idea of building your trigger for the zone comes in.
Okay.
It's a personalized routine that helps you access a state of peak performance on demand. And the best part is, it's not just for athletes.
Right.
It's something anyone can use.
A trigger for the zone.
Yeah.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued.
It's pretty cool.
Tell me more.
Okay.
How do you build one of these things? And how does it work?
So
last time things got pretty mind-bending.
Right.
With slowing down time and reading intention. But you also mentioned this idea of building a trigger for the zone.
Yes.
A way to tap into peak performance on demand. That sounds almost too good to be true.
It might sound like something out of a movie.
Right.
But Waitzkin breaks it down in a way that's surprisingly practical.
Okay.
He uses the example of Dennis, a high-powered executive who was constantly stressed and struggling to perform at his best in those crucial meetings.
So how did this trigger thing work for Dennis?
Well,
what did his routine look like?
Dennis started by creating a pre-meeting routine to help him get into the zone.
Okay.
A light snack, a bit of meditation, some stretching, and listening to music.
So far, so good.
Yeah.
Sounds pretty relaxing.
Right.
But I'm guessing there's more to it than just doing those things whenever you feel like it.
You're right.
Okay.
There's a key element here. Consistency.
Okay.
Dennis didn't just do this routine before meetings.
Right.
He integrated those elements into his daily life.
Oh.
For example, that light snack.
Yeah.
A fruit and soy smoothie.
Interesting.
He started having it every day before work.
Okay.
Not just on meeting days.
So he's building a strong association between the smoothie and a feeling of calm and focus.
Yes.
Even outside of those high-pressure situations.
Exactly.
Clever.
Yeah.
And he didn't change anything else about his routine at first.
Right.
He still did his meditation and stretching separately, just reinforcing that initial trigger.
Yeah.
Then he started to shorten his meditation time. Gradually, over a few days, from 15 minutes to 12, then 10.
The idea being that his mind and body are already primed for that relaxed focus from the smoothie and the full meditation. So even a slightly shorter session still has a powerful effect.
That makes sense.
Exactly.
He did the same thing with his stretching, slowly reducing the time.
What's fascinating is that he also experimented with changing the order of his routine.
Oh, really?
Sometimes meditation first, then stretching.
Right.
Sometimes mixing it up.
So it wasn't about following a rigid formula.
No.
But about finding what worked best for him.
Exactly.
This is starting to feel a lot less mystical and more like something anyone could actually do.
That's the point Waitzkin makes. It's
Yeah.
about customization. What works for one person might not work for another.
Right.
The key is to experiment and find what helps you access that zone feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, Dennis was able to condense his entire routine down to about 12 minutes.
Wow.
And it was more powerful than ever.
That's impressive.
It is.
But 12 minutes is still a decent chunk of time.
Yeah.
What if you need to get in the zone quickly,
Okay.
like in 60 seconds?
Sure.
Is that even possible?
Waitzkin addresses that too.
Okay.
The next step is to gradually reduce the routine even further.
Okay.
Until you can trigger it with just a few deep breaths.
Wow.
He talks about using a mental image, a sound,
Right.
even a physical sensation as a shortcut to that zone feeling.
So it's like creating a mental button
Yeah.
that you can press whenever you need to access that state.
Exactly.
But wouldn't that take a lot of practice to get right?
Absolutely. It's
Okay.
not magic.
Right.
It takes time and consistent effort to train your mind and body to respond to these subtle triggers.
Oh.
It's like building mental muscle memory.
This reminds me of Waitzkin's experience with performance anxiety, particularly with music.
Okay.
He talks about how distracting music would get stuck in his head during chess matches,
Oh, wow.
which sounds like a nightmare for someone who needs intense focus.
He described it as a telltale heart pounding like thunder in his mind.
Oh, man.
It's a feeling a lot of us can relate to, right?
Yeah, totally.
That annoying earworm you just can't shake.
Yeah.
But for him, it was happening at crucial moments in competitions.
So how did he deal with that?
Wow.
Did he try to block it out?
At first, yes.
Okay.
But he realized that just made it worse.
Right.
So he did something completely counterintuitive.
Okay.
He learned to embrace the distraction.
Oh,
He started thinking to the beat of the music,
okay.
using it as a rhythm for his focus.
That's wild.
It is.
It's like he transformed that mental noise into a tool to sharpen his concentration.
Exactly.
Instead of fighting it, he harnessed it.
It's a great example of how Waitzkin's always looking for ways to turn adversity into an advantage. He doesn't just try to power through obstacles.
Yeah.
He finds creative solutions.
And that's a skill that's valuable in any field,
Yeah,
not just competitive ones.
absolutely.
Thinking about how Waitzkin tackled those musical distractions, it makes you wonder,
Yeah,
what other unexpected things could we train ourselves to leverage?
right.
Maybe that annoying coworker who always stops by your desk could become your zone trigger.
Now, that's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
Waitzkin's approach really does encourage you to reframe your thinking.
And speaking of reframing,
Yes.
he also talks about this concept of interval training for the mind.
Okay.
Wait, isn't interval training a physical thing?
Yeah,
Like sprinting, then resting,
Right.
repeat?
right.
What did that have to do with your mind?
He learned this from training at a high-performance center called LGE,
Okay.
where they worked with top athletes,
Uh,
and they applied this concept of intense effort followed by recovery.
right. To mental tasks as well.
So it's like sprinting, then taking a break, but for your brain.
Exactly.
But how do you actually train your mind to recover more effectively?
They did this through structured activities,
Okay.
focusing intensely on a mentally demanding task for a set period, then taking a complete break.
Okay.
What's fascinating is that they found this actually creates physiological changes that make you more resilient to stress,
Interesting.
both mentally and physically.
So it's not just about pushing yourself to the limit.
No.
It's about strategically building in those periods of rest and recovery.
Exactly.
Makes sense, but I'm not sure how I'd apply this to my everyday life.
Yeah.
I can't exactly call a timeout in the middle of a presentation at work.
That's where the idea of building your trigger for the zone comes back in.
Okay.
Remember, it's all about creating that shortcut back to a state of peak performance.
Right.
When you're feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah.
The fear of losing that focus can prevent you from taking a break. It's like you finally climb to the top of a mountain
Right.
and don't want to climb back down,
Uh-huh.
even if you need to catch your breath.
Exactly.
But by having that trigger,
Yes.
you're training yourself to relax and recover without the fear of falling apart.
That's the idea.
That's a game changer.
It is.
It makes those breaks less intimidating.
Right.
So we've covered building a trigger for the zone, how to
Yes.
condense it,
Uh-huh.
and using interval training to improve recovery.
Right.
Anything else we should be taking away from this part of the book?
One thing Waitzkin emphasizes throughout is the importance of self-awareness.
Okay.
He talks about how early in his chess career, he relied on this really intense, almost aggressive style of focus. He'd basically force himself into the zone,
Right.
but it was exhausting.
He describes it as almost willing himself to focus.
Yeah.
That does sound unsustainable.
It does.
Like you'd burn out pretty quickly.
And that's when he discovered what he calls the soft zone, which is all about relaxed focus.
Right.
Being fully present without feeling tense or strained.
Yeah.
It's more about finding a balance between effort and ease.
That sounds much more appealing.
It does, doesn't it?
And probably more effective in the long run.
I think so.
But is the soft zone something you're born with? Or can you actually learn to cultivate it?
Waitzkin believes it's a skill you can develop.
Yeah.
And one of the techniques he uses is meditation.
Right.
He describes it as clearing interference in the mind.
So it's about quieting the mind.
Yeah.
Letting go of those distractions and anxieties that prevent us from being truly present.
Exactly.
But isn't that easier said than done?
It can be.
I've tried meditating before.
Uh-huh.
And mostly just ended up feeling frustrated.
I know what you mean.
How do you actually quiet your mind when it feels like a runaway train? Last time we were talking about the soft zone, like state of relaxed focus.
Yeah.
It sounds great in theory, but I imagine it's pretty tough to maintain when you're in a high-pressure situation.
It can be.
Like, how do you stay calm and centered when the stakes are high and the competition is fierce?
Well, Waitzkin doesn't just tell us about these techniques.
Right.
He shows us how they work in the real world.
Okay.
The final part of the book takes us to the 2004 Push Hands World Championships in Taiwan.
Okay.
And let me tell you, it's a wild ride.
This is where he puts all those principles to the test.
Exactly.
Thousands of competitors.
Right.
A massive stadium.
It's intense.
Intense pressure.
Yeah.
It sounds like the ultimate proving ground.
He even talks about some opponents resorting to,
Really?
shall we say, less than sportsmanlike tactics.
Like what?
Trying to distract him, get under his skin.
Oh, wow.
It's a good reminder that even in something as seemingly zen as Tai Chi,
right,
the human element can get pretty messy.
So how did he handle that?
Well,
did he try to ignore it?
At first, yes.
Okay.
He tried to maintain that stoic facade, but he realized it took too much energy.
Right.
And actually made him more susceptible to those mind games.
So he took a page from his soft zone playbook.
Exactly.
Wait, I thought the soft zone was about letting go of tension and relaxing.
Right.
How does that work when someone's deliberately trying to mess with you?
It's about finding that balance between inner calm and outer awareness.
Okay.
He wasn't ignoring the distractions. He was acknowledging them.
Yeah.
But instead of letting them rattle him, he channeled that energy into an even deeper state of focus.
It's like a martial arts master redirecting their opponent's energy back at them.
That's a good way to put it.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
But those mental games were just one part of it, right?
True.
He was also facing some seriously skilled opponents.
He describes facing guys with razor-sharp technique, explosive power.
Okay.
One opponent, nicknamed the Buffalo, sounds particularly intimidating.
Right.
Huge, strong, and incredibly aggressive.
Okay. Against someone like that.
Yeah.
Brute strength isn't going to cut it.
No.
What did he do?
This is where all those years of refining his technique really paid off.
Okay.
He talks about making smaller circles,
right,
how he'd focused on perfecting the fundamentals until they were almost invisible.
It's like that boxer with the perfectly honed jab we were talking about earlier.
Yes.
Simple, but devastatingly effective.
Exactly.
And he was also using his ability to slow down time, to process information faster than his opponents by picking up on tiny details.
Yeah.
Like their blinking patterns and subtle shifts in weight.
It's amazing.
Hold on, blinking again.
I know, right?
He's saying he could anticipate his opponent's movements based on when they blinked.
Yeah.
That sounds almost superhuman.
It does sound wild, right?
Yeah.
But he explains it as a heightened state of awareness.
Okay.
Being so attuned to his opponent that he's picking up on these tiny cues that most people would miss.
So he's hyper-aware.
And remember, this is all happening while he's staying grounded in that soft zone.
It's incredible how he blends these ancient philosophical ideas with practical application.
Right.
It's like he's taken Eastern wisdom and turned it into a competitive edge.
And then, just to make things even more challenging, The rules of the competition were changed at the last minute.
What?
Imagine training for months,
Yeah.
having your entire game plan based on a certain set of rules,
Right.
and then, bam, everything changes.
Talk about a curveball.
I know.
How did he deal with that?
Initially, he was furious.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Understandably.
Right.
He felt like it was a deliberate attempt to sabotage him.
Oh, wow.
But instead of letting that anger consume him,
Yeah.
he used it to fuel his adaptation.
So he turned that setback into an opportunity.
Yes.
Classic Waitzkin.
Exactly.
He realized that even though the rules had changed, his opponents were still accustomed to fighting a certain way.
Right.
He used their expectations against them,
Clever.
letting them take the initial control, and then using their own momentum to his advantage.
It's brilliant.
Okay, now I have to know.
What's that?
Did all of this work?
Well,
Did he manage to overcome those obstacles and win the championship?
I don't want to spoil the ending,
Right.
but let's just say the final match against the Buffalo is a real nail-biter.
Oh, man.
You'll have to read the book to see how it all plays out.
So it's cliffhanger.
But win or lose, it's a powerful demonstration of Waitzkin's principles in action.
It's not just about physical skill.
No.
It's about mental toughness, adaptability, and being able to stay centered under pressure.
That's what Waitzkin really drives home in The Art of Learning.
Right.
It's not just about winning championships.
Yeah.
It's about mastering the learning process itself.
It's about embracing challenges,
Yes.
learning from mistakes, and continually refining your approach.
Exactly.
Waitzkin shows us that we can achieve incredible things.
Right.
Not because we're born with some special talent,
Yeah.
but through hard work, dedication, and a love of the journey.
He gives us practical tools to become more resilient, more focused, and more creative, no matter what we're striving for.
So, to our listener out there,
Yeah.
what's the one thing you'll take away from this deep dive?
That's a good question.
What's resonated with you most?
For me, it's that mastery isn't about perfection.
Okay.
It's about progress.
Like it.
It's about seeing setbacks as opportunities to grow and finding a way to turn adversity into fuel for your journey.
And remember, learning is a lifelong pursuit.
It is.
Never stop exploring, never stop growing,
Right.
and never stop pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone.
Absolutely.
Who knows what you might be capable of achieving?
Until next time,
Yes.
keep diving deep.